Back home now, it's a double act of a political kind. ACT, the party, has announced David Seymour as its Whangārei candidate in the 2020 election. But it's not the David Seymour that you're thinking of. Confusing? We know it. A Whangārei businessman and namesake of the party's leader has joined the campaign as an advocate for the End of Life Choice Act. The two Davids got together via Skype to tell Checkpoint why they want to see more Davids in Parliament. But first, let's clarify the basics. Would the real David Seymour please raise his hand? Is politics not confusing enough that you have to go and do this?
Look, I just thought, what does New Zealand politics need? Double the David Seymour. No party in history has tried the strategy of having two David Seymours as candidates. We think this could go really well.
Really? How am I going to differentiate between you when I want one to answer a question, David and David? How's this going to work? What's your middle name?
David 1, David 2.
David Seymour on my right. What's your middle name?
Andrew.
Oh, okay. So there is a slight difference there. David Breen on my left and David Andrew on my right. Okay.
But, we're at David's house here, and I actually just drove past my childhood home, which is 500 metres away.
Too many odd convergences here. So is that your strategy, David Seymour of Whangārei? Is it to get some spillover from the support, and the name recognition from David Seymour Epsom?
Well, I hope it goes both ways, to be honest. I've already had phone calls from friends in Auckland congratulating me on what I'm doing. So I think it's going to flow both ways, to be honest.
David Seymour from Epsom, what do you reckon? Are you going to get extra votes from people?
Look, David Seymour is an excellent candidate in Whangārei and has had a long profile as a businessman in this town. As I said, I grew up here as the other David Seymour, and we actually used to get each other's phone calls even then. So, David Seymour is a very well-recognised name in Whangārei long before I came along.
So, David Seymour of Whangārei, how seriously are you taking this? Because, to be absolutely brutal, the last ACT candidate there got a real butt kicking for, 2 elections in a row.
Yes, you're right, I guess. I'm taking it quite seriously. The thing being is that, you don't do anything like this half-heartedly, really, and as my wife will contest to, when I do something, I get quite serious about it. So despite my current situation, I'm in this boots and all, as they say.
Explain what you mean by that, your current situation, and how's that informed your political thinking?
Well, my current situation, goes back to 2017 in February when I was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. I'd always been a little bit of a follower of David from Epsom because of the namesake. And when his bill came to fruition in Parliament, I phoned him up and said, how would you like to have someone on your team with the same name but with a terminal illness with the End of Life Choice bill? And from there, I've done what I can to encourage people to see the purposes of that bill, and I'm a strong supporter, and I always will be. But I want to add, I was actually a supporter of the assisted dying long before I was terminally ill, but this has really enforced it.
Are you going to be a single issue candidate?
No. I think the principles of the ACT Party and my own business philosophy are very well aligned in the way of having business, being able to do business. I also have strong opinions probably on the firearms issues.
What are they?
Oh, well, I just think, how it all came about with the unfortunate happening in Christchurch last year and the rush of the bill to change the ownership of firearms and the type of firearms. I think it wasn't given enough due diligence. It was just this is how we're going to do it, and there wasn't enough address to the people actually affected to be able to come up with reasonable reasons why the changes were. I mean, one incident, and then all of a sudden we're changing the way our hunting and shooting sports people have been affected. One incident.
Are you guys on the same page on everything, or do you disagree with him on something? And if so, what is that?
Probably early days yet, but I think generally, most sort of press releases I've heard from David in the last few years, I'm pretty much in agreement with. Sometimes there's a tweak here or there.
Really? You agree with him on almost everything? Everything?
Don't sound so surprised, Lisa. Some people do agree with me.
Maybe it's the name, I'm not sure.
Exactly. Well, this really lends itself to some cracker headlines. I'm surprised you didn't use one, David Seymour of Epsom. What happened to double act at the top of your press release?
Oh, look, we're not so sure about, acts, double entendres. We thought we could call it double D, double your David, Seymour.
I think you might get yourself in trouble with some of those.
Seymour David too. There's endless fun to be had.
All right. Is there any more of you just before we head off? Is this it? 2 David Seymours this election?
Not that I'm aware of.
Look, I can confirm nor deny that the ACT Party has a strategic reserve of David Seymours to release on the election.
Hang on, I'll just check the white pages.
And that is, the David Seymours, both of them, standing this election.